to have you with us on this Monday morning. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Stephen Romo in for Savannah Sellers today. Right now on Morning News Now, heartbroken and traumatized. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi breaks her silence about the violent attack on her husband inside their home. As Paul Pelosi recovers from serious injuries this morning, that incident raising new concerns about violent extremism and online conspiracy theories. We've got the latest on that investigation. Halloween tragedy. More than 150 people killed and hundreds more hurt after a crowd surge in South Korea. 2 Americans are among the dead. What we're learning about this deadly stampede as South Korean officials call for a thorough investigation. Also this morning, crunch time. Candidates have a little more than a week to make their case to voters, while political heavyweights, including former President Obama, head to swing states like Wisconsin and Georgia. And in Georgia last night, the contenders for Georgia's governor race held their final debate. We've got full coverage on that this morning. Plus, work worries. People who switched jobs during the Great Resignation now have a new concern, losing those new jobs. The new polls showing why workers feel they're about to be laid off and what you can do if you think your job is at risk. A lot going on this morning, and it's Halloween.
And it's Halloween. We are anchormen this morning. That is our costume, but we have some great costumes to share with you a little bit later this hour.
Can't wait for that one. We do have a lot of news to get to first. We begin this morning with that latest on the attack against House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband, Paul Pelosi.
The 82-year-old remains in the intensive care unit in a San Francisco hospital this morning after he was attacked by a man with a hammer. It happened early Friday morning inside the Pelosi home. The speaker was not there. She was in Washington at the time of the incident. Now, the San Francisco District Attorney's Office is expected to announce charges today against the suspect in the attack, 42-year-old David DePape. Speaker Pelosi was seen yesterday leaving her home to visit her husband at the hospital. Over the weekend, she released a statement saying the incident left her and her family, quote, heartbroken and traumatized. NBC News correspondent Maura Barrett joins us now from San Francisco with the latest. Maura, good morning to you. We know Mr. Pelosi underwent surgery following the attack, is expected to recover. And over the weekend, we learned some new information about the suspect. So what do we know? Where does the investigation stand right now?
That's right, Joe. Well, Mr. Pelosi is recovering from surgery for a skull fracture, and he also suffered serious injury to both his arm and hands. Now, in terms of more details about the attack, police confirmed to us over the weekend that we know that the suspect now broke in through a rear window and then went upstairs, which is where he found Mr. Pelosi. Now, Capitol Police, which is responsible for protecting the home when Pelosi is there, has not given any information about whether an alarm went off or any details about any security footage, as this is still an open investigation. Police did also confirm that they found zip ties at the scene after they detained and arrested Mr. DePape, and also said and confirmed that the 2 men did not know each other previously. Now, the DA is expected to announce charges today, telling me over the weekend that she plans to bring attempted homicide as well as assault with a deadly weapon, burglary, elder abuse, and other felony charges related to Friday's attack. I want you to hear some of our conversation when she breaks down her calculus to get to these charges.
So right now, it's specifically the striking of Mr. Pelosi's head with the hammer in a very violent manner that has led us to believe that we will file attempted murder charges. When you take a hammer to somebody's head in that violent of a fashion, we believe you're trying to kill them.
Now, the DA went on to say, as the investigators are reviewing the suspect's online activity, she said that this is a wake-up call that shows the severity of the state of political discourse in this country. Again, she's expected to announce those charges today. The suspect remains in the hospital, but the plan is for now for him to be arraigned in court tomorrow, Joe.
Maura, we're also learning more about that 911 call that Pelosi was able to make from inside the home. What can you tell us about that?
So this was something that really made a huge difference, Joe. Mr. Pelosi was able to make a call to 911 operators in a secret sort of way, and the way he was talking to the operator indicated that something was wrong. The police chief broke down how the dispatcher responded. She's a 23-year veteran working for the 911 dispatching service, and she immediately elevated the call to make sure that police could show up within minutes. Take a listen to what the police chief said.
That dispatcher, her instincts and her intuition and her experience, to kind of decipher what was being said and say something else is going on here. It was life-saving in my opinion. Instinctively, she knew that maybe for some reason he wasn't saying what he wanted to say, and he was trying to give indications that something is wrong here, but couldn't say it. And she figured it out, I think, pretty quickly.
Police calling the dispatcher a hero because as officers showed up just minutes later, that's when they found Mr. Pelosi and the suspect struggling over a hammer, and that's when the attacker struck him at least once in the head. Joe.
Maura, also over the weekend, Twitter's new owner, Elon Musk, tweeted, then deleted an unfounded conspiracy theory about the attack. It came from a website that has a history of disinformation. So the head of Twitter putting out false information about the attacks. What is it experts and critics are saying now about the importance of online regulation and about fears that disinformation and misinformation could lead to more political violence?
Well, nothing could underscore it more, right, Joe? Elon Musk has over 100 million Twitter followers. He just in recent days became owner of the platform. I'm not standing very far away from where Twitter HQ is. And when he elevates something like this that is completely false, police debunking what the conspiracy theory that he was sharing, it just furthers the potential for physical violence, right? As our colleague Ben Collins, who's a disinformation reporter and focuses on this stuff, he says lies on the internet spread faster than truth. And so over the weekend, we saw an outpouring of support from bipartisan lawmakers saying that the country needs to find a way to have civil conversation that doesn't result in violence. And the reality of the situation is that the U.S. Capitol Police has reported a major uptick against threats of violence against members of Congress, specifically over the last 5 years, more than doubling their reports because of this online disinformation and hate rhetoric that is spread online. Again, we are just over a week until the midterms. And so there's a lot of concern, especially when someone like Elon Musk is in charge of a platform like Twitter and has that amazing reach, that this could just have even more potential for physical violence against political leaders.
And we'll delve more into that with Ben Collins next hour. Maura, thank you so much.
Turning now to the midterms, now just 8 days away. With the balance of power in Washington at stake, Democrats and Republicans are making one final push to get supporters inside voting booths in those crucial battleground states. Over the weekend, we saw the nation's top Democrat, President Biden, cast his ballot in Delaware. The president says he plans to spend these final days before Election Day traveling to several states, including battlegrounds Florida and Pennsylvania. For the latest on key races across the country, let's bring in NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. Mark, good morning to you. So we know that the president will be very busy on the campaign trail over the next few days, but it was also a packed weekend for his former running mate, former President Barack Obama. So where was he and what was the message he was trying to get across?
Yeah, it was a very busy weekend for former President Barack Obama. On Friday, he was campaigning in Georgia for Stacey Abrams as well as Raphael Warnock in those close gubernatorial and Senate matchups. And then on Saturday, he was campaigning in Wisconsin and also in Michigan. And he was actually speaking about what Maura was just reporting about earlier about the attack on Paul Pelosi, as well as just the kind of conspiracy theories and uptick in violent threats that we've seen over the last few years. Take a listen to what the former president said.
The pandemic also highlighted, and in some cases made worse, problems that we've been struggling with for years. An economy that too often works for those at the very top, but not for everybody else. There was a shift, and this is a long-term trend, but we saw it get worse, of just a breakdown of basic civility, of basic neighborliness, and nowhere did you see it more than in our politics, where suddenly you have politicians doing their best deliberately to stir up division.
One of the other arguments that we ended up hearing from the former president was that candidates that Republicans are running, like Herschel Walker in Georgia, just aren't qualified for the positions that they are. Some very biting comments from the former president.
Well, Mark, you mentioned Georgia. Let's talk more about that key battleground state. We know the final debate, the second and final debate between Brian Kemp and Stacey Abrams last night. What are some of your key takeaways from that?
This is a race where all the polling has shown that Brian Kemp seems to be in the driver's seat in this contest against his challenger, Stacey Abrams. And in last night's second and final debate, we ended up seeing the two candidates clash on issues like the economy, crime, but especially abortion. And take a listen to these exchanges last night.
If the legislature passes a more restrictive abortion law, abortion bill, would you sign that bill?
Well, I'm not going to count on, say yes or no to any specific piece of legislation without actually seeing exactly what it's doing. It's not my desire to go move the needle any further on this issue.
Let's be clear. He did not say he wouldn't. We know that he has praised the Texas bounty system that allows neighbors to make $10,000 by reporting on women. Brian Kemp does not have a plan for the lives of the women who are being forced to carry pregnancies to term that are unwanted pregnancies. But more importantly, he refuses to protect us. He refuses to defend us, and yet he defended Herschel Walker.
This, again, is one of the marquee gubernatorial contests that we are following in such an important state, both for Senate control and also maybe the next presidential contest come 2024.
Yeah, we've been talking about that one for a long time. Definitely one to watch. And broadening this view out, Mark, we're also seeing Democrats wrap up spending in big blue states. Could that mean we're seeing another red shift in those historically blue areas of the country?
Yeah, Stephen, it certainly seems like the poll numbers that we've seen, as well as the spending now that have actually gone to fortify blue areas as opposed to Democrats being the ones playing offense right now, does seem to suggest right now that Republicans are the ones with the momentum. But again, I would just caution here that 2 years ago in the 2020 cycle, it seemed that Republicans were the ones that were on the defensive. And while Joe Biden ended up winning the presidency, Republicans are able to make some important gains across the country there. And so sometimes the momentum can be a false indicator, and we have 8 days to go, and I think a lot of back and forths and twists and turns that we'll see.
8 days, a lot can happen. All right, Mark, thanks so much.
We're also watching Arizona, a crucial battleground state with 2 high-stakes races on the ballot next week. Voters there have a choice between Democrat Katie Hobbs and Republican Kari Lake to fill the open seat left behind by outgoing Republican Governor Doug Ducey. And in the Senate, Democratic incumbent Mark Kelly is fighting to hold onto his seat against Republican Blake Masters, who, like Lake, has been backed by former President Trump. MSNBC anchor Ali Velshi sat down with Arizona voters to discuss what issues are driving them to the ballot box.
I think one of the things that is should be of utmost concern is the threat against abortion rights and how it's been politicized by by heavy conservative political bodies. And really, at the end of the day, this impacts people down to their ability to live, their ability to exercise agency over their own bodies. This is something that should not be a political tool, but should be recognized as a life or death issue.
And I think what's motivating me right now, especially with going to the election and going, voting. This is my first midterm election. Wow. And
right.
The big thing that I didn't think would have to be an issue is misinformation and denying something that is so simple and basic. At the end of the day, I am what most people target as. I am what is constantly being harmed. I am a queer person with a uterus, and it's like I'm of color, and it's just constantly my rights are being pushed away.
The most important issue in Arizona when I'm voting is protecting the essence of our democracy. We're, for worse, ground zero of this election denier stuff, the fraud, the audit that they did with the ballot in the 2020 elections. When I'm deciding who to vote for, it's a disqualifier if the person isn't 100% honest of the fact that we had an open, honest, fair, and free election.
Right.
And you're speaking as a Republican.
I'm speaking as yes, I'm technically a registered Republican.
We should note that early voting has already started in Arizona, though new data shows the number of voters casting early ballots is down compared to the 2018 midterms.
All right, turning to some breaking news this morning out of Ukraine, where Russia has launched a wave of new missile strikes against several cities. You can see the smoke rising here over the skyline in Kyiv, where parts of the city were left without electricity and water. Ukrainian officials say more than 50 missiles were launched at the country, but they intercepted 44 of them. The attacks came after Moscow blamed Ukraine for an attack on its Black Sea fleet and pulled out of a crucial grain deal.
South Korea has declared a period of national mourning after more than 150 people died over the weekend during a crush at a Halloween celebration. Among those who were killed, at least 26 foreign nationals, including 2 from the U.S. Officials are promising a thorough investigation into the tragedy. Let's get more on this with NBC News contributor Thomas Maresca, who joined us now from the South Korean capital of Seoul. Thomas, good to have you with us. So walk us through how this all unfolded and what we're learning about the victims.
Good morning, Joe. Fundamentally, too many people in too small of a space. One street over from me is an alley filled with bars and nightclubs that was crowded with tens of thousands of people that were here to celebrate Halloween. And, beyond that, the actual details of an inciting incident, what happened to cause this crush, is still being investigated. Eyewitness accounts talk about people falling backwards like dominoes. The alley is on a slight incline, so that could have played a factor. But at this point, a lot of questions still remain to be answered as to how this happened. Among the victims, the large majority were people in their 20s. More than 2/3 were people in their 20s. The rest were teens and 30s. So a very young group of partygoers. And as you mentioned, 2 of them were Americans. It was Stephen Blessy and Ann Gieske, who were both 20-year-old study abroad college students here.
I do want to ask you more about the investigation. I mean, what is it authorities in South Korea are saying that we can expect from the investigation in the coming days and weeks?
They've put together a task force of around 475 people. They've been over here interviewing witnesses, examining closed-circuit TV footage. So far, they've said they haven't seen anything that is a criminal factor. And again, they don't know, they haven't announced any sort of cause yet. I think we'll eventually learn the fundamental details of it. But I think the bigger question that most people are starting to ask with greater urgency is really, how could this have happened? There have been a lot of complaints or criticisms already that there just weren't enough police here to start with. And then when things started to get too crowded, there were not ample crowd control measures. And those are questions that the investigators are going to have to address, and that the public, are still in a mourning period, but I think demands for those answers are going to increase as well.
Thomas, while we have you, I do want to ask you about something else. The U.S. and South Korea started their largest ever combined military air drills today. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so they kicked off, it's a 5-day joint air drill. It's called Vigilant Storm. There's around 240 planes taking part, 100 from the U.S., 140 from South Korea, including F-35 bombers. And it really comes in the context of heightened tensions on the peninsula for several months now. North Korea has been conducting weapons tests and missile tests one after the other, and officials in Seoul and Washington are assuming that a nuclear test is imminent anytime. So, in response, the U.S. and South Korea have really ramped up their combined operations. They've grown closer in their military cooperation as a response or a preparation for just anything that might happen now. But the U.S. and South Korea have also conducted large-scale field drills, naval drills. So this is kind of continuing in this pattern where the stakes seem to keep rising.
All right, Thomas, thank you so much for that report from South Korea. We appreciate it.
All right, let's get a check of your morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Michelle Grossman joins us now with the Halloween forecast. Hey, Michelle, good morning.
Hey there, guys. Great to see you. And we are looking at some showers and spots on this Halloween, even into the Halloween evening. We have showers this morning stretching from the lower Mississippi Valley into the Great Lakes, the Ohio and Tennessee Valley, also down to the southeast. And you can see on radar where you see those brighter colors. That's where we're seeing the more moderate rainfall. And that will be the story as we head throughout this Halloween forecast, because we're looking at an area of low pressure, actually 2 of them, joining forces that will bring the showers to the eastern part of the nation. We're not talking about washouts. We're not talking about widespread widespread severe weather, but still could see a thunderstorm or two and could see some heavier showers from time to time. So this is the setup. Those pair of low pressure systems kind of joining forces, bringing isolated rain showers along the East Coast. And we could see some strong winds, too, likely along the Appalachians, the highest levels of the Appalachians as we head throughout today. And then tomorrow, it slowly moves off the coast. We'll see lingering showers last in portions of New England, and we're going to limit those severe weather risks as well tomorrow. We're well above average, though, despite the cloud cover, despite the showers in place. So temperatures 60s and 70s in some spots. That's good news for some of those costumes on this Halloween day. We're looking at 66 in Fargo. That is 18 degrees above normal for this time of year. 66 in Denver, 60s in Des Moines, near 70 degrees, 73 into Wichita. And then as we head towards the Ohio Valley, temperatures near 70 degrees also. Cincinnati, 68 degrees today. That's 7 degrees above normal for this time of year. Then 60s along the coast, 60s in Portland, 64 in New York City, and 69 in Richmond. We're going to keep it warm tomorrow. Once again, temperatures into the 60s and 70s. Oklahoma City, tomorrow, 73 degrees, 62 in Cleveland. Baltimore, you're warm tomorrow, 73. That's 11 degrees above normal. And we will keep it mild as we head throughout the first part of November. We're looking at temperatures in the 60s, near 70 in Washington, D.C. on Thursday and Friday, 70s for Raleigh. 70s also in Nashville. Look at Friday, near 80 degrees, coming in at 78 degrees. It's going to be chilly on the West Coast, also unsettled. We had an unsettled week last week. We're going to see that once again today. We're looking at mountain snow in the highest elevations, also a chilly rain and winds gusting up to 40 miles per hour. So not the greatest Halloween forecast there. Then as we head towards tomorrow, that cold front will sink to the south and also the east. So we're looking at some showers extending from Nevada into California. Still seeing those strong winds in the mountains and heavy snow. That's going to impact travel. And guys, this will continue into the later part of this week. So we just continue to see the showers moving onshore there. Back to you.
All right, Michelle, thanks so much. Appreciate it. Sure. Coming up on Morning News now, the future of college admissions on the docket.
The Supreme Court is set to hear 2 cases concerning affirmative action. We're taking a closer look at those cases and what it means for college campuses nationwide. That's next.
Welcome back. The Supreme Court is set to hear oral arguments today in 2 cases challenging the use of affirmative action in college admissions. The cases involve claims that the University of North Carolina and Harvard University violate equal protection principles and discriminate against Asian Americans. Joining us now to break down these 2 cases is NBC News Washington correspondent Yamiche El-Sindor and NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos. Good to have both of you with us. Yamiche, let's start with you. So the conservative group Students for Fair Admissions is challenging Harvard and UNC here. It claims the schools improperly use race as a factor in admissions, giving preference to Black, Hispanic, and Native American students. What would be the impact? What would the impact be on the way institutions shape their student bodies if the court does rule against them here?
Well, this is, as you said, a big day at the Supreme Court because they are hearing 2 cases centered on affirmative action and college admissions. This is a case where that anti-affirmative action group that you just mentioned, Students for Fair Admissions, they've sued Harvard University and the University of North Carolina, saying any use of race in in college admissions, that is unconstitutional, and that they're saying that white students and Asian students in particular, that they are being discriminated against. Now, supporters of affirmative action say that this is really a way for colleges to build a diverse set of populations for their college campuses. And the Supreme Court has looked at this 3 times, and each time they've said you can't have a racial quota, but you can look at race if it's part of a holistic view of the student. And that's what these universities say that they're doing. If these justices, which is a 6-3 conservative majority that has already shown that it would overthrow, that it can at least, and is willing to overthrow precedent, that would mean that affirmative action could be barred in the nation, which means that colleges and universities across the country, they would not be allowed to look at race in any form. Civil rights activists say that this is really problematic and that this could hurt Black and brown students in particular whose families have been historically barred from universities. That being said, it's of course anybody's guess what really will happen here. We will likely get an answer in the summer of 2023. But to your question, again, it could end affirmative action as we know, which would be a big step for this Supreme Court.
Danny, let's bring you in here. What are the legal arguments you expect to hear on both sides?
This can be boiled down to an analysis that began in 1978 with a case called Bakke. In other words, anytime the state or anytime someone discriminates based on race, they have to show that there is a compelling interest, a really, really, really good reason, or else it will be struck down. Since 1978, when colleges discriminate based on race, they say that their compelling reason is to achieve diversity, that a university has the liberty to create a diverse student body. What I expect is likely to happen, and folks, I'm going to make some predictions, but generally, if I bet red, you should bet black. I'm not very good at predictions, but in all likelihood, if you look at why the court even took up these two cases, one against a private university and one against a public university, and consolidated them, when the lower courts decided those cases on essentially the exact same grounds. Well, why would they do that? In all likelihood, at least one of those schools is going to lose. If I were to bet, I would say UNC because it's a public university. And in addition to Title VI, UNC must also comply with the Equal Protection Clause. Very complicated stuff, but if you want to boil it down, it really comes down to, is diversity still a compelling interest on college campus such that it warrants the use of race in determining who gets to attend that university? Diversity can still be important, but is it so important that it trumps the requirement that we do not take race into account when we deal with college admissions? That's really the question here.
So, Yamiche, let's look backward here. The lower courts ruled in favor of the schools, finding that they used race in a, quote, sufficiently limited way to fulfill a compelling interest in diversity. But with, as you mentioned, the high court's new conservative makeup, do observers think there's a good chance this decision is going to be overturned?
In talking to experts and people who have been watching this 6-3 conservative majority, I've been hearing that there is a high likelihood that this will be overturned and that affirmative action will likely be barred from colleges and universities using it in admissions. Now, of course, that's experts who've been watching this. That's people who are nervous, frankly, and telling me that they think that this conservative majority court, that they will rule that any sort of use of race in college admissions, any sort of use of weighing that issue, that will be seen as unconstitutional, which, again, to talk back to what civil rights leaders are saying, they would say that this could hurt universities across the country in terms of diversity, in terms of building diverse campuses. And that I should also note, when you look at the history of affirmative action, it began because after the civil rights movement, you had people like President Lyndon B. Johnson and civil rights leaders like Martin Luther King say it's not enough just to start saying we can let African Americans in now after they've been barred for hundreds of years. We need to find a way to level the playing field and to take into account the historical wrongs that have happened. So all that is to say that these conservative majority justices could say, okay, well, it's 2022 and we're done with all of that, and now it's time to end affirmative action across the country.
We'll see what happens. Yamiche and Danny, thank you both for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Opening arguments are getting underway this morning in New York City in the case against the Trump Organization. Prosecutors allege the company engaged in a multi-year scheme by top officials to avoid paying taxes. NBC News investigative correspondent Tom Winter joins us now from New York City on what we can expect here. So, good morning, Tom. We know the prosecution is ramping up this trial. What are they expected to focus on?
So, Stephen, this is going to be a focus on 15 years, according to prosecutors, where the Trump Organization engaged in several schemes or conspiracies to essentially defraud taxpayers of the money that we should have gotten here in New York State. And that's where it's focused on. It's a state charge. There's no individuals that are going to be on trial today. Of course, they're not going to walk the Trump Tower down here into court. This is going to be something that's going to be argued and presented by the attorneys for the Trump Organization only. The key component of this is whether or not the Trump Organization and its CFO, Alan Weisselberg, properly paid taxes on benefits that were conveyed to Alan Weisselberg. So we're talking about cars, we're talking about an apartment, we're charges for those cars, other types of benefits that he was paid. You can get those benefits as an employee by your employer. That's no problem at all. It's illegal, prosecutors say, and the law says if you don't pay taxes on those benefits because that's a form of income to you. And that's really what this all boils down to. Speaking of Weisselberg, he's expected to be the star witness approximately a week from now when he takes the stand. Part of his guilty plea and his cooperation agreement is that he testifies against the Trump Organization for the very same behavior hire that he says he did while he was acting as the CFO. So it's kind of a very unusual type of case where you have somebody testifying that they were involved in the very thing that you're charging the company against. So that's something that we'll watch. That promises to be potentially an enlightening component of this trial. A lot of documents here, a lot of financials here, Stephen. That's going to be the key to this, and that's what we expect to hear over the course of the next month or so while this case proceeds. We started out with 132 jurors. We said literally a week ago on this program it would take 1 to 2 weeks for a jury. Here we are a week later. We're ready to get started.
Right on cue. And we know right now, Tom, former President Trump and his children are not expected to testify at this trial. Does this mean they're not facing any individual charges here?
That's exactly correct. So not only are they not expected to testify, they are not on the hook here at all legally. So they don't. There's no jail time for this. The maximum is $1.5 million in fines. So there's really no particular exposure to the individuals, the Trump family individuals, as a result of this case. In the state AG's case, but that's an entirely different matter altogether.
And have we heard much from the Trumps about this trial? This trial is starting right now, Tom?
Right. So that's one of the interesting things about all this, Stephen. Basically, you have a situation here where they've put out a number of statements. In most of the cases, the investigations that have involved either the state prosecutor here, which is the district attorney for Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, or the state AG, Letitia James, when they've kind of gone after these investigations and the charges that were ultimately levied against them or the civil filing against them, they've focused on the political nature of it. We haven't heard a lot about the type of defense that they'll offer up. They haven't necessarily attacked the very specific allegations that are included in the indictment. So it's not clear. Obviously, they've denied any sort of wrongdoing and illegality, but it's not quite clear yet how they're going to attack the matter at hand.
Interesting to hear what Weisselberg will have to say. Tom Winter, thank you.
International headlines now. More than 100 people are dead after a bridge collapse in India.
Claudio Lavanga joins us from Rome with that and more. Good morning, Claudio.
Good morning. Yes, hundreds of people were celebrating the Diwali festivities in India by walking across a colonial-era bridge or footbridge that had literally just undergone renovations when the cables holding it together just collapsed. Hundreds of people who were on the bridge plunged 33 feet into the river. 170 have been rescued so far, but more than 130 have been declared dead. Now, while the rescuers are looking for more potential victims, a local politician says that the cause for the collapse, unsurprisingly, was overcrowding. Let's go to Brazil, where on Sunday, Lula da Silva won the presidential elections, beating the incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro. This victory represents a major comeback for Lula, who spent a year and a half in prison on charges of corruption and money laundering before his sentence was overturned, allowing him to return to politics. And what a return. Now, Bolsonaro is yet to concede. And finally, let's go to Shanghai, where a Disney resort suddenly suspended operations to comply with COVID-19 prevention measures, forcing all visitors to stay inside until they return a negative test. Videos shared on social media in China, which have not been verified yet by NBC News, show panicked visitors rushing to the locked gates. Last November, 30,000 visitors were locked inside the resort for 2 days until they were all tested. Well, definitely not a fun ride, guys.
Yeah, definitely not. Hopefully they weren't on a roller coaster that whole time or anything like that. All right, Claudio, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Coming up this morning, cases of anti-Semitism are on the rise.
Now NBA star Kyrie Irving is under fire for promoting an anti-Semitic film after Kanye West ignited controversy over his hateful comments. We're going to take a look at the impact these incidents are having on the Jewish community next.
Welcome back. It's a troubling trend. Anti-Semitic incidents are on the rise in the United States. And as a matter of fact, incidents are now at the highest level since they started keeping track back in 1979. That's according to the Anti-Defamation League. To try to make more sense of this, we're joined by Scott Richmond. He's director of New York, New Jersey region of the Anti-Defamation League. So good morning, Scott. Thanks for joining us. Let's start with the big picture here. How much of an increase have you seen in these anti-Semitic instances over the past few years?
So ADL has been keeping track of anti-Semitic incidents, as you said, since 1979. And our headline for the most recent, what we call audit of anti-Semitic incidents, was a very troubling one. It was the highest level we had ever recorded, and it was a full 34% jump from the year before to 2,717 incidents across the country.
Wow. So over the weekend, Brooklyn Nets player Kyrie Irving was criticized for social media posts appearing to promote an anti-Semitic film. Can you explain what happened there?
So that's exactly what happened. Kyrie Irving had promoted this film, which we believe is anti-Semitic. It pushes theories, conspiracy theories about Jews, Jews being responsible for the slave trade, Jews worshiping Satan. And we were very, very troubled by his promotion of this film and then subsequent doubling down on that. We were relieved that he removed the post, but we hope that he will denounce this. Kyrie Irving is a celebrity, sports figure, and many young people look up to celebrities and sports figures. They have a big following on social media, and it's important not only that he pull down the comment, but that he also denounce it.
And what do you think about the backlash to Irving's statements? Were you surprised that there weren't more of them?
Look, we were very heartened by the statement by Joe Tsai, the owner of the Brooklyn Nets, and the Brooklyn Nets themselves condemning the promotion of anti-Semitic hate speech. We really appreciate their leadership and look forward to continuing our discussions with them. We also appreciate the NBA's statement reaffirming its commitment to countering hate speech of any kind, including anti-Semitic hate speech. It's very troubling, but very important that these individuals came out quickly and condemned it.
And you mentioned the importance of celebrities being held accountable. The ADL has released advice on how to turn anti-Semitic statements by public figures like Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, into these teachable moments for young people. What would you like them to learn from incidents like this?
Look, this happens on a regular basis. ADL is working in the schools. We see many anti-Semitic incidents in the schools, but very quickly, and typically what happens when there are incidents in the schools, bias incidents, not just against Jews, but against many communities that can be persecuted, against Muslims, against the LGBTQ+ community, against African Americans, whatever the group is. And when that happens, we typically turn to the school and we say, use this as a teachable moment. Use this as an opportunity to say, hate will not stand. That's the way that hate is typically controlled. Hate is typically controlled by civil society standing up and pushing it to the margins. So this is an opportunity for anybody to speak out against hate. We've put forth a resource. It's on our website. It's a blog, essentially, which offers instructions on how to use this as a teachable moment. ADL typically puts out these blogs. We typically put out what we call table talks. Table talks are conversations that can be had around difficult issues. Parents should use this as a resource. Schools should use this as a resource. And civil society in general should use this as a resource.
Concerning stuff and so important to speak out. Scott Richmond, thank you.
NBC News has learned the Biden administration is preparing for a surge in Haitian migrants by looking at plans to hold them in a third country or at Guantanamo. The United Nations says about 96,000 Haitians have fled the island as local gangs threaten to overrun the country. This all comes as Haiti confronts a massive outbreak of cholera. Health officials believe the disease has spread to nearly every region of the island. NBC News Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley joins us now. So, Julia, good morning. First up, what is the Biden administration considering if we do see a rise in Haitian migrants?
Well, Joe, this is based on 2 U.S. officials and documents that we were able to review here at NBC News. We understand the White House for weeks has now been holding a series of meetings on this issue because while right now there isn't widespread migration by boat, they think that once fuel is turned back on in the country, right now it's being stopped by violent gangs from being come out. But when it does get turned back on, they think that the boats may be able to be powered up and they could see a mass migration of Haitians by by boat, and they have plans for when they see an uptick in interdictions by sea. They're looking at the numbers now, how many migrants they would need to see before they went to a third-party country, another island perhaps, where they could process those migrants, see if they qualify for asylum in the United States, rather than having them all make the dangerous trip to the United States and perhaps overwhelm the U.S. immigration system. Then if the numbers get so big at that third-party country, they would also consider nearly doubling the capacity at Guantanamo Bay. That's something not a lot of people realize, that there's actually a migrant operations center at Guantanamo Bay that operates completely separately from the prison for suspected terrorists. This is a migrant operations center specifically for migrants that are interdicted at sea in the Caribbean. And there are now plans to double that capacity to about 400 beds. That would be their surge capacity. That's, again, according to those planning documents. All of this is still under consideration and not final.
So Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister to discuss this growing crisis. First, here's what they had to say about the situation.
We agree that between deepening food and fuel shortages, the growing cholera outbreak, and gangs blockading ports and terrorizing civilians, the situation is simply unsustainable.
We definitely need to support Haiti to make sure that, and bring the international community to support Haiti facing this important crisis. And finally, I would say it is also of equal importance to address the political crisis, because there needs to be fair elections happening, and we need to make sure that the environment for these elections to happen is the right one.
So, Julia, I have to assume that Blinken is working with other agencies within the U.S. What more can you tell us about that response?
That's right. So in addition to USAID and the CDC having teams on the ground in Haiti responding to the humanitarian situation and the cholera outbreak, the U.S. has also delivered some tactical equipment to the Haitian government that they say was purchased by the Haitian government that can help them in the fight against those violent gangs. I'm not going to get into all the details here, Joe, but I'd encourage people to go read these stories of just how violent things have been in Haiti recently. People really just being terrorized by these gangs who are trying to undermine the government and really overthrow the current presidency in Haiti.
All right, Julia, thank you so much for your reporting. We really appreciate it.
Well, coming up this morning, a lot of people switched jobs during the pandemic.
And for those who took part in the Great Resignation, well, some now have a new worry, getting laid off. We're going to take a look at why they're concerned their new jobs could be on the line next. Welcome back. Some new polling this morning shows people who switched jobs during the Great Resignation are concerned their positions could now be at risk as a potential recession looms.
Yeah, Bankrate says 60% of people who changed employers for a higher salary say they're now worried about their future. And 19% say they're very worried. On the other side, though, only 28% of people who did not switch jobs say they're concerned about their positions.
Let's bring in Chief Economist for ZipRecruiter, Julia Pollack, for more on this. Julia, good to have you with us. So first, let's get right to the point, the thing that some folks are concerned about. Do we think we'll actually see more companies lay off workers in response to a potential economic downturn on the horizon, or is there reason to be optimistic?
Well, overall, layoffs remain low, but there is some sectoral pain, and we are seeing some industries that are disproportionately affected by high interest rates laying off workers now. People moved from industries that were dead during the pandemic, like gyms and restaurants and hotels, to the industries that were growing and adding jobs, like real estate. And there was a retail stock trading boom. There was a mortgage refinancing boom. So the economy added 50% more mortgage lenders. It added a whole lot more stockbrokers. A record number of Americans became real estate agents. Those industries are now deep in the dumps.
Well, Julia, let's talk a bit about the growing concerns that the Federal Reserve may not be able to control inflation, despite several interest rate hikes we've seen over the past few months. What kind of effect could rising prices have on unemployment data?
So the interesting thing about rising interest rates right now and rising prices is that inflation is really what's hurting households more than rising interest rates. Most American households, about 2/3, are in a sub 4% mortgage right now. They used the pandemic as a chance to refinance with those record low rates. And so as interest rates go up, it's not really affecting them that much. It is affecting businesses, of course, especially the capital-intensive businesses that require loans to do their business. And so hiring is starting to slow down. In just last month, we saw the smallest number of jobs added to the economy since April of 2021. That said, that small gain was 60% bigger than the 2019 monthly average. And so while this labor market is cooling, it's still pretty hot out there.
So for those who are worried their jobs are at risk, it's always good to be prepared. What's your advice for them?
So the net gain of jobs in the economy can swing wildly from sort of minus 10 million to plus 7 million. And when you see those kinds of headlines, it can be pretty terrifying. But what I like to tell people is that hiring is actually a lot more stable than you think. In the worst years, in the worst months, companies add 4 million jobs. Companies hire 4 million people. In the very best months, they hire 7 million people. And so your chances are actually not that much worse than you think. The economy is constantly hiring people. There are constantly jobs being created and destroyed. And so you need to just get out there and start looking and not feel too bad about a layoff. We sometimes treat layoffs like marriages, like divorces, and get really, really upset about them and take them very personally. Try not to think about it that way. The average American has about 14 jobs in their lifetime. Move from one to the next.
Julia Pollack with a little bit of life coaching there. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Welcome back and happy Halloween. We wanted to take a minute to look at some of our favorite stars' spooky costumes from the Halloweekend. Lizzo turned into a cartoon dressing as Marge Simpson from The Simpsons. That's a good one right there. The Kardashians dressed to impress, with Kim Kardashian as Mystique from X-Men and her kids as different hip-hop icons. Sierra and her daughter paid homage to the famous Got Milk ad of tennis sister duo Venus and Serena Williams. Very well done there. Meanwhile, not wanting those stars to outshine them, here's the view from our very own control room here at 30 Rock this morning. Looking good. You see our director, Regina, as Gem in the holograms. Truly outrageous. And finally, a personal favorite from the Morning News Now team, our senior producer, Jennifer's son, Kylas, looking absolutely adorable in his 3 costumes: a lion, a peacock, and a scrumptious avocado.
Some wardrobe changes there.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, that does it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But your news continues right now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.